Test, 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 pulpit mic test. Test, 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 pulpit mic test. Test, 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 pulpit mic test.
Good morning. Welcome to the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I suspect we're going to ring a bell, but I'm not 100% sure about that. That's all right. We'll go without the bell this morning as long as everyone's in. Oh, there's a bell. Okay. Not the bell I was expecting, but that's awesome. Sounds like it's dinner time. Whoever you are and wherever you come from, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation, and all are welcome. I invite you to follow along in the order of service. For those of you attending virtually, all the links for this service, including the order of service, are on our website and in this morning's worship service email. If you are here in the sanctuary this morning, please silence your cell phones. My name is Ed Luby. I am your current board president. I was elected to the board just after we were quarantined into our homes for COVID, which means that I've never actually been to a board meeting other than on Zoom. I will be keeping my mask on today, although my directions say to remove it because I feel there's a bit of a double standard to have some people masked and some people unmasked who are presenting the program. So I will stand by my convictions, even though not everyone agrees with that thought. Our worship leader this morning is Reverend Carol McKinley. She has been KUUF's bridge minister and serves on the Healthy Congregations team for the Pacific Western region on the UUA. I'd like to welcome any visitors. If you're here in person, we all look forward to welcoming you outside after the service. The announcements are available on our website, www.kuuf.org, or in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. Now for our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. Now please stand as you're willing and able to sing our musical call to worship, hymn number 1000 in the Teal hymnal, Morning Has Come.
Reverend Teresa Soto, in her poem, "To the People Who Have Mistaken Freedom for Liberation," she writes, "To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to be actually free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, it is a promise." Good morning. It is good to be together.
This morning our chalice lighter is Elaine Stefanowitz, who is our newest member, having signed last week. Join me now in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as I read our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice to help us move from untruth to truth, to help us move from ignorance to wisdom, to help us move from animosity to love, to help us move from bondage to freedom. We rededicate ourselves before this light to affirm and practice truth, wisdom, love, and freedom, today and in the days to come.
Got it?
Now please join me in the spoken affirmation. The words will appear on the screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Now, Melinda Hughes, our Director of Religious Education, will share our time for all ages.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you here today. Today, I am going to share a story with you by Peter Reynolds called "Say Something." And if you really like it, if you go on YouTube, you can actually, there's a video of the author reading the book. The world needs your voice. Mine? Yes, yours. Go ahead. It doesn't need to be perfect as long as it's from your heart. You don't have to be loud. Powerful words can be a whisper. You can say something in so many ways, with words, with action, with creativity. If you see someone lonely, say something by just being there for them. If you see an empty canvas, say something with your brush. If you see an empty lot, say something by planting a seed and watching it bloom. If you see someone being hurt, say something by being brave. Hey, stop. If you see something beautiful, say something with a poem. And the poem says, "Painted meadow splashed with rainbows." If you have a brilliant idea, say something with confidence. Eureka! If you want to show the world who you are, Say something with style. Ta-da! If you are angry, say something to help people understand. You made me feel invisible. That really hurt. I'm really sorry. If you see an injustice, say something peacefully. No more hurting people. Peace. Inspire others to do the same. And there's all these different ways of saying peace. Sometimes you'll say something and no one will be listening. But keep saying what is in your heart, and you will find someone who listens. Keep saying it, and you may be surprised to find the whole world listening. If you are grateful for being alive, quietly say something to the stars, to the universe. Some people find it easier to say something than others, but everyone has something to say. And the people here are saying, I hope, I believe, I wish. Together we can. I'm ready to change the world. I imagine. Join us. So when you're ready, say something. Your voice can inspire, heal, and transform. Your voice can change the world. Are you ready to say something? All right. And that is our story for this morning. So now it is time for those children that are going to go up with me to the children's area to be sung out by all your lovely voices.
Please remain standing while we sing our next hymn, We'll Build a Land. It's number 121 in the gray hymnal. The original title was Creation of Peace, music by Carolyn McDade. The words, written by Barbara Zanotti, are paraphrased from the Old Testament books of Amos and Isaiah. Please join us in singing hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land. Now it's time for our morning offering. If your offering is for KUUF, please put it in the envelopes in the baskets. Loose change, cash, or checks placed in the basket will go to this month's recipient of our charitable giving recipient, Kitsap Mental Health. If this is your first time at KUUF, you are our guest and there's no need to contribute. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our community, which is sacred to so many of us. Let's enjoy a gift of music from our pianist, Brian Kenny, Allegretto by Ludwig von Beethoven. Now's the time for our joys and sorrows. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. We have 5 joys and sorrows today. 2 are from me because I'm here, so I get to give you my own too. Phil McConnell says his joy is that his black lab and soulmate and loyal companion will be 6 years old this week. Happy birthday, Gus. Bonner Sams has a joy today that today is the 10th anniversary of his massage license going to active status with the Washington State Department of Health. He is so happy and grateful to have a career that brings him such joy. Ellen Newberg has a great joy and gratitude for the fabulous musical barbecue provided yesterday for 50 successful 2021 auction bidders. Hosted and donated by Beth and Paul Wilson, Jane Kornman, and Bob Reineck. It was a great party and a very successful fundraiser for KUUF. Thanks to the successful bidders as well. I have a joy today that Governor Inslee has decided that at the end of October, we will be able to end this state of emergency for COVID. Hopefully that will show some progress in what we're all going through. And I do have a candle of sorrow and remembrance. This is the 21st anniversary of 9/11, and I would like to take a moment just to let that not escape us for all of us who remember that so poignantly. And we light one last candle for those joys and sorrows that are still too tender to share.
I invite you to join me in a moment of prayer and reflection. In the spirit of community in which we find strength and common purpose, we share our joys, our sorrows, our hopes, our dreams. We have turned our minds and hearts toward one another in trust, giving love, seeking comfort, and celebrating together. We are part of the web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with all the universe. In all the moments of our lives, for those loved ones and events shared in this moment, and for those we yet hold in silence in our hearts, we are truly grateful for the love and support of this beloved community. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen, and blessed be. Please remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life. It's number 123 in the gray hymnal. The words will also appear on your screen.
Our first reading today is from Neil Gaiman's Introduction to a New Edition of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. He writes, "Why do we need the things in books? The poems, the essays, the stories? Authors disagree. Authors are human and fallible and foolish. Stories are lies, after all, tales of people who never existed and the things that never actually happened to them. Why should we read them? Why should we care? Ideas, written ideas, are special. They are the way we transmit our stories and our thoughts from one generation to the next. If we lose them, we lose our shared memory, our shared history. We lose much of what makes us human. And fiction gives us empathy. It puts inside us the minds of other people, gives us the gift of seeing the world through their eyes. Fiction is a lie that tells us true things over and over.
Is from a speech on book banning by the late Nobel laureate Toni Morrison. She writes, "I come from a race of people for whom at one time in this country it was illegal to be taught to read. White people who taught black people how to read were taking the risk of being punished. I think the same sensibilities that informed those people to make it a criminal act for black people to read are the ancestors of the same people who are making it a criminal act for their own children to read. And I don't see a great deal of difference between that. There is some hysteria associated with the idea of reading that is all out of proportion to what, in fact, happens when one reads." Now, let us be together for a moment of reflection, followed by our post-reflection music. Thank you, Brian. A recent letter in the Seattle Times resonated with me. The writer said, "I was 12 when I got my hands on the book Peyton Place by Grace Metalius. Totally engrossed, each night I reached under my pillow and dived into another eye-opening chapter. I never liked reading in school. As a slow reader, it was just too laborious, or maybe it was a dull subject matter." She continues, "I learned from that experience that anything banned will be the go-to first priority book for kids. And libraries and schools can ban all the books they want, but just so they know, our smart, savvy kids will find a way to read them." She concludes, "Mom found Peyton Place under my pillow. That's what moms do." Her response, "Peyton Place is playing at the theater. Would you like to go see it with me?" And off we went. P.S. The book was much better than the movie. Now, her letter made me laugh because it reminded me of my own experience as a young reader. The book my mother discovered I had been reading surreptitiously was Gone with the Wind, which she felt was too racy for my young eyes. Unlike the letter writer's mother, my mom did not offer to take me to the movie. I did, however, find out where she had hid the book after she confiscated it from me, and I did finish reading all 1,032 pages in the book. Now, as the letter writer pointed out, banning books is a surefire way to boost readership. Following the banning in some school districts of Maus, Art Spiegelman's graphic novel about the Holocaust, sales of the book surged. Efforts to ban books from schools and libraries are surging, and those of you who attended the adult education workshop here yesterday learned more about some of those efforts. So in recent months, threats to freedom of speech and expression are making headlines as angry parents and community members disrupt school board and library board meetings, demanding that books and curricula materials be removed. Meanwhile, those book challenges are being met by vigorous efforts to keep the books on the shelves. PEN America, a nonprofit working to protect freedom of expression in America, describes recent book banning efforts as unparalleled in their intensity, frequency, and success. All of us are very much aware of the attack last month on Salman Rushdie, a former president of PEN and the author of the Satanic Verses, for which Rushdie endured years of death threats under a fatwa. But books are not only condemned and banned in autocratic regimes. In the past 12 months, here in the United States, more than 1,500 book bans have been instituted in school districts. The Nobel laureate Toni Morrison's novel, The Bluest Eye, the story of a young black girl's experiences in the 1940s, has been banned in 12 school districts. PEN America's report shows the striking impact of the ongoing effort by conservatives to censor literature in this country's schools. The bans have largely targeted books that focus on race and LGBTQ issues, and many of the banned books are written by non-white or LGBTQ writers. PEN America found that nearly 1,600 book bans were implemented in 86 school districts across 26 states. And quite frankly, said PEN America's spokesperson, quite frankly, the results are shocking. Challenges to books, specifically books by non-white male authors, are happening at the highest rates we've ever seen. Now, challenges have long happened in school board or library board meetings. In fact, I attended in Thurston County library board meetings in which some books were challenged, and that was probably 25 years ago. But it isn't just the frequency that has changed. Also changed are the tactics behind them. Shouting down meetings and pushing challenges into state legislatures and into political races. Those demanding removal of certain books insist this is an issue of parental rights, that all parents should be free to control the upbringing of their children. Their opponents, including teachers and librarians, say that removing challenged books violates the rights of others who believe access to all books is important, especially for discussions around racism or sexual assault. Attacks on titles, authors, and subject matter remove any possibility for conversation. Of course, as I said, efforts to censor or ban books is not new in this country or in the world. They surface when political or social changes threaten the status quo, as they did in the decade Senator Joseph McCarthy's rants about communist conspiracies gripped this nation, and the Hollywood blacklist left writers unable to find jobs. They surfaced in Nazi Germany, as Hitler's National Socialist Party led massive book burnings in town squares to destroy the words of Jewish writers and thinkers. They occurred in Soviet Russia as Stalin attempted to erase words he felt questioned his totalitarian control and sending their authors to the Gulag. They're happening today in Russia as Vladimir Putin imposes draconian restrictions on that country's news media. Now, as I have been following over several months the news of book challenges in the United States, I had an urge to reread Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. The title refers to the temperature at which paper burns. Bradbury wrote that novel in 1951, a time when he was witness to and strongly reacted to the threat of freedom of expression in the United States by the activities of the House Un-American Activities Committee led by the demagogue Senator McCarthy. I had first read Fahrenheit 451 when I was in high school, but what remains with me from that book are the images from Francois Truffaut's 1966 film version, especially that hauntingly beautiful final scene in the movie of the book people walking in a snowy forest, quietly reciting their books. For those unfamiliar with the novel, Fahrenheit 451 is set in a future totalitarian American city where people do not read books, enjoy nature, or have any meaningful conversations. Instead, they watch excessive amounts of television on wall-sized sets and listen to radio on seashells in their ears. Guy Montag is a fireman, but then this dystopian novel, firemen do not put out fires, they start them. Montag's particular task is to burn books. When he responds to an alarm that an old woman has a stash of hidden literature, the woman shocks him by choosing to be burned alive with her books. Montag then begins questioning what is happening in his world. So he visits a retired English professor he once met, hoping to understand why books are important and why they are feared. The professor tells him that the value of books lies in the ideas and the detailed awareness of life that they contain. Montag flees his job and the city, ultimately finding a group of renegade intellectuals called the Book People, who welcome him. They are part of a nationwide network of book lovers who have memorized many great works of world literature and philosophy, becoming the living repositories of the books they have memorized. Montag then joins them. His role is to memorize and thus become the book of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew Bible. Now, I found that although Bradbury's novel is dated in some ways, the message remains the same. Books won't stay banned. They won't burn. Ideas won't go to jail. In the long run of history, the censor and the inquisitor have always lost. The only sure weapon against bad ideas is better ideas. The source of better ideas is wisdom, wrote the historian Alfred Whitney Griswold. Margaret Atwood, whose Handmaid's Tale is among books targeted by censors, wrote of Fahrenheit 451, "Books are condemned," in that novel, all books. The very act of reading is considered detrimental to the social order because it causes people to think and then to distrust the authorities. Instead of books, the people is offered conformity via four-wall TV sets with sound piped directly into their heads via those shell-shaped earbuds, a brilliant and perhaps prophetic leap on the part of Bradbury. Now, what drives groups or governments to censor words or images? The U.S. Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, in his opinion regarding a 1960s pornography case before the court, said, "Censorship reflects society's lack of confidence in itself. It is a hallmark of an authoritarian regime." Long ago, he said, those who wrote our First Amendment charted a different course. They believed a society can be truly strong only when people are free from the interference of a policeman's intrusive thumb or a judge's heavy hand. So it is that our Constitution protects coarse expression as well as refined and vulgarity, no less than elegance. Justice Potter's views are as true today as they were 60 years ago. Intolerance and censorship spring from a society's fear of the new, fear of thoughts that question long accepted views. And intolerance is not restricted to one side of the political spectrum. As conservative voices rail against books that make white children feel bad, like the History 1619, which I'm reading right now, liberals are calling for the removal of To Kill a Mockingbird because of the use of a derogatory term for a black man and for its reliance on a white savior to save the oppressed. Now, these actions from both the left and the right sides of the political spectrum would deny students and the adults in their lives the important opportunity to talk about the ideas in those books, discussing, debating, and more deeply understanding the historical events and how those events are portrayed in books of their time. And this, after all, is a basic goal of public education. True education is not the spoon-feeding of facts and concepts approved by those in power, but rather helping students of all ages learn how to read and better understand those books and ideas, how they were shaped by a particular time and place, how those ideas have evolved and are understood differently today, how new knowledge helps us develop a broader awareness of how we shape and are shaped by the events of our time. Book bans erase that possibility of deepening understanding of learning about others' lives and their views of the world. They restrict the marketplace of ideas. The beloved children's author Judy Blume, who saw her books challenged in the schools, said, "It's not just the books under fire now that worry me. It's the books that will never be written, the books that will never be read, and all due to fear of censorship. And as always," said Judy Blume, "young readers will be the real losers." Our Unitarian Universalist tradition has, in its long history, been subjected to censorship and persecution because of the fear of ideas that challenge traditional beliefs. In the early days of Christianity, Heated debates occurred among priests in the church at that time about the role of Jesus in the new religion. Violent conflicts, literally battles in the street about the role of Jesus, became so common that the Roman Emperor Constantine, concerned about how these conflicts were disrupting his empire, called together a council of Christian bishops in the city of Nicaea in the year 325. And he issued an ultimatum: stay here until the question of Jesus' relationship to God is resolved. So for days, the bishops debated. The majority felt that Jesus was divine, to be included in the divine trinity of God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. The Libyan priest Arius disagreed. He argued that Jesus was the perfect human whose teaching should be honored, but that Jesus was not equal to God, that God was singular. When the council ended, Arius was outvoted by the bishops. His Unitarian views declared a heresy, and he was banished from the Roman Empire. Thus, the Christian doctrine of the Trinity was established and still remains. And so, through the centuries, things did not get easier for those who questioned that Trinitarian doctrine. In 1553, Michael Servetus, the Spanish theologian, physician, and Renaissance humanist, wrote 2 books that challenged mainstream Catholic Christology and rejected the Trinity doctrine. Those 2 books, entitled On the Errors of the Trinity and the Restoration of Christianity, were condemned by Catholic authorities in France. Servetus fled to Geneva, a city controlled by the Protestant John Calvin and his followers. Well, Servetus's books and his views were denounced by John Calvin. Servetus was then tried by the city's governing council and burned at the stake for his heresy. Universalism arose from similar dissenting roots. Christian churches in England and much of Western Europe in the 18th century were heavily influenced by the theology of original sin and predestination, harsh teachings that emphasized salvation for only the select. This interpretation of Christian scripture was questioned. It was questioned, and then it was rejected by those who believed in a loving, benevolent God, a God of unlimited love that bestowed universal forgiveness and promised salvation for all. This universalist message was considered heretical, and when Universalist preachers spoke in churches in England, they were persecuted. One of those preachers was John Murray. After his home was burned in England, John Murray fled his homeland and brought Universalism to America, where it thrived as a religion in the 18th and 19th centuries. Now, although our UU congregations today do not face having our ministers driven from their communities or our buildings burned, there have been other attempts to censor our ideas. Black Lives Matter or gay pride banners have been destroyed or defaced, and this religious tradition is still seen as a heresy by some. Nevertheless, our congregations and this faith have persisted, speaking out for our right to hold our own understanding of truth, of faith, of God. This tradition's ancestors, Arius, Servetus, Murray, and many others have stood fast against repression of words and ideas that others have considered offensive. We have spoken out for truth as we understand it and for the free expression of ideas. In today's tumultuous world, how do we live those values, those Unitarian Universalist values, in our communities and in the larger world? Where is the church? Any church, any faith community, not just Unitarian Universalism. Where is that church today? I read an article this spring by Jericus Collins in Yale Divinity School's journal Reflection, and he spoke to this question. He wrote, "The church ought to ground itself in three things, which will be the only way the church will be able to survive radically changing times: human responsibility, truth-telling, and love in action." He continues, "Truth-telling is a task the church must adopt and normalize. Many refuse to regard the church as a safe haven because too often the church normalizes lies and denies truth, even denying the importance of people who decide to free themselves from the chain of ancient lies. Historically, African Americans were told by the white church that they were slaves. This was the great lie of the American church. Historically, LGBTQ persons have been told that their lives don't matter, and women have been relegated by patriarchal violence, all in the name of God. These lies are fatally exposed by the truth. The church has to be a center for truth, and telling truth comes with accepting that we all need space to grow." Collins concludes his article, "Where in the world is the church? The church is found amongst the people of God and is actualized through human responsibility, truth-telling, and love." Each one of us can actualize our faith through responsibility, truth-telling, and love. And here's just one suggestion. Go to your library and ask one of those wonderful librarians, the guardians of all those stories, using all those beautiful and sometimes not so beautiful words, and ask them where on the shelves you can find a copy of 1619, or Mouse, or All Boys Aren't Blue, or Toni Morrison's Beloved, or The Bluest Eye. And tell that librarian how much you appreciate them and their beleaguered profession. Then take those books home, read them, and ask yourself, on what have these authors based their views, their opinions? What are their characters in these novels telling you about their lives? Then share your understandings with others and speak out against the repression of ideas in schools and libraries, sharing how writers, historians, and artists have deepened your understanding of our world, have sparked discussions, expanded your empathy for other people, your appreciation for the words and images that have influenced your sense of what it means to be human in this world. I especially urge you to go to your library or bookseller on September 18th. That week is the week of Banned Book Week, as proclaimed by the American Library Association. And it's a time to particularly acknowledge and perhaps read a few banned books. The book battle isn't about to end anytime soon. And as a religious community, we have a responsibility to speak up for the freedom of expression and against censorship and book banning. We have a responsibility to lift the veil of silence around the full story of this country's history, to hear the words of those who bravely tell that story. We have a responsibility to make sure all understandings of sacred stories can be heard. We have a responsibility to challenge those who seek to silence all those who believe their lives and their stories matter. On this day, may we continue to pursue truth, to tell the truth, and to choose love. And so may it be. I invite you now to stand as we join in our closing hymn, Come and Go With Me. It's number 1018 in the teal hymnal. When we need sight. As we close this service, let us commit ourselves to not be silent, to open our ears to listen and our eyes to see. And in doing so, let us go in peace.